When I saw her face through the peephole, my whole body went cold. Sarah, my ex-wife, the woman who had destroyed our family 6 years ago when she ran off with her yoga instructor. The woman who had missed our daughter Emily's graduation last month because she was on a spiritual retreat in Bali. I opened the door just enough to see her clearly. She looked different, older, thinner, her once shiny blonde hair now dull and pulled back in a messy bun. But what really shocked me was the little girl clinging to her leg, maybe 4 years old, with the same big blue eyes Sarah used to have before life hardened them. "Mark," she said, and I could smell the cigarette smoke on her clothes. We need to talk." The child looked up at me with curious eyes. "Are you my new daddy?" she asked in a tiny voice. My stomach dropped. I felt like I'd been punched. This was his child, the yoga instructor's daughter. And Sarah had the nerve to bring her here? "Whoa, wait right there," I said, stepping outside and closing the door behind me so Emily wouldn't hear. "What the hell are you doing here, Sarah? And what kind of question is that to teach a child to ask?" Sarah's eyes filled with tears. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean... It's just that Jason left us. He took all our money and moved to Costa Rica. I have nowhere else to go." I actually laughed, a bitter, angry sound. "So, let me get this straight. When Mr. Perfect abandons you, suddenly you remember where your real family lives? What about the last 6 years, Sarah? What about all the birthdays and Christmases you missed? What about when Emily had her appendix out, and you couldn't be bothered to return my calls?" The little girl started to cry, burying her face in Sarah's jacket. Sarah knelt down to comfort her, then looked up at me with those pleading eyes I used to fall for. "Mark, please, just hear me out. I've changed. I realize now what I threw away, and Emily deserves to know her sister." Sister. The word hit me like a truck. I looked at the little girl again, really looked at her. The shape of her nose, the way her eyebrows arched. No, it couldn't be. "You're telling me," my voice cracked. "This is Emily's sister? My daughter?" Sarah nodded, fresh tears streaming down her face. "I was going to tell you, I swear. But then things got complicated with Jason and I didn't let her finish." I turned around, walked back inside, and slammed the door so hard the pictures on. The wall rattled. I leaned against the door, my heart pounding, trying to process what I just heard. "Dad?" Emily's voice came from the living room. "Who was that?" I took 3 deep breaths before answering. "No one important, sweetheart." But my hands were shaking. Because if that little girl was really mine, if Sarah had kept my child from me all these years, then this wasn't just about Sarah coming back. This was about a secret that could destroy everything all over again, and I had no idea what to do next. To the audience, can you imagine being in this situation? Would you have slammed the door like Mark did, or would you have heard Sarah out? Let me know in the comments what you would do if your ex showed up with a child you never knew about. And stay tuned for part 2, where we'll find out if that little girl really is Mark's daughter. The DNA test results will shock you. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that little girl's face. Her blue eyes, the way her nose scrunched when she was about to cry. Emily's sister. The words played on a loop in my head, twisting my stomach into knots. Sarah had left me once. She had walked out on our family without looking back. And now, 6 years later, she was standing on my doorstep with a child she claimed was mine. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at my untouched coffee, when Emily shuffled in, still half asleep. "Dad, why are you up so early?" she mumbled, rubbing her eyes. I forced a smile. "Just had some things on my mind." She poured herself cereal, oblivious to the storm raging inside me. My daughter, my real daughter, was 14 now. Old enough to remember when Sarah left. Old enough to understand betrayal. But not old enough, I hoped, to carry the weight of this new bombshell. The doorbell rang again. Emily frowned. "Who's here this early?" I stood up so fast my chair scraped against the floor. "Stay here," I said, my voice tighter than I meant it to be. Sarah was back. Alone this time. No little girl. Just her. looking even more exhausted than last night, her arms crossed like she was holding herself together. "Mark," she said before I could speak, "I know you're angry. I know you hate me. But you have to listen to me." I stepped outside, pulling the door shut behind me. The morning air was cold, matching the ice in my veins. "Start talking," I said. "And it better be good." Sarah took a shaky breath. "Her name is Mia. She's 4. And yes, she's yours." I clenched my jaw. "Prove it." She reached into her pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. A DNA test. My name was on it, my signature, except I'd never signed anything. What the hell is this? I snatched it from her hands, scanning the document. It looked real, dated just a few months after she left. "I got it done when she was born," Sarah admitted. "I was going to tell you, but things got complicated with Jason. He didn't want another man's kid in his life, and I was scared." "Scared?" I nearly laughed. "You were scared, so you just hid my daughter from me? For 4 years," she flinched. "I didn't know how to come back. I thought you'd never forgive me." You were right. The words hung between us, sharp and final. Sarah's eyes filled with tears again. "Mark, please. Mia deserves to know her father, and Emily deserves to know her sister." I wanted to scream. I wanted to shake her and demand how she could do this, how she could keep a child from me, then waltz back into my life like she had any right. But then I thought about Mia. That little girl, innocent in all of this. Did she even know who I was? Did she think I abandoned her? "Where is she now?" I asked quietly. Sarah wiped her eyes. "At a motel down the road. I didn't want to bring her again until we talked." I exhaled, running a hand through my hair. This wasn't just about Sarah anymore. This was about a little girl who might actually be my daughter, and I had no idea what to do next. The DNA lab was colder than I expected. I sat in the waiting room, knee bouncing, staring at the framed certificate on the wall that promised 99.9% accuracy. The receptionist kept glancing at me like she knew exactly why I was here. Another broken man looking for answers in a test tube. Sarah had insisted on coming. She sat 2 chairs away, chewing her thumbnail down to the quick. Mia was with some friend of hers, thank God. The last thing I needed was that kid seeing me like this, jaw clenched, hands shaking, barely holding it together. Mark David Russo? A technician in blue scrubs stood in the doorway. I stood up too, fast. Sarah reached for my arm, but I jerked away. The room smelled like antiseptic and bad decisions. The technician, Jeremy according to his name tag, explained the process like I was some idiot. Swab the cheek, seal the sample, wait 3 to 5 business days. I barely heard him. All I could think about was that little girl's face. If she's mine. The cotton swab scraped against the inside of my cheek. It shouldn't have hurt, but it did. Sarah went next. When she sat down, the chair creaked under her weight. She'd gotten thinner since she left. The woman who'd walked out on us had been all yoga-toned arms and designer jeans. This Sarah had frayed cuffs and hollow cheeks. Jeremy labeled the samples with a practiced hand. "We'll need the child's sample to complete the trio test." Sarah pulled an envelope from her purse. Inside, a smaller plastic bag with another swab. "I did hers yesterday." Of course she had. Planned this whole damn thing. I should have walked out then. But I didn't. Because here's the truth. I needed to know. Even if it destroyed me. The next 5 days were hell. Emily knew something was wrong. She kept catching me staring at old photos, at the baby pictures of her that looked nothing like Mia. "Dad?" She cornered me in the garage on day 3. "Is Mom trying to come back?" The wrench slipped in my hand, banging against the workbench. "What makes you say that?" Emily shrugged, but her eyes were too sharp. 14 going on 40. "Jake said he saw her car down the street." My stomach dropped. "When?" "Last night." She picked at the chipped paint on the toolbox. "Are you gonna take her back?" The question hung between us like a live wire. I wiped my greasy hands on a rag. "No, Em, never." She nodded, but I saw the doubt in her eyes. Kids always hope, even when they shouldn't. The call came at 9:17 a.m. on the 6th day. I was elbow deep in dishwasher repairs when my phone buzzed. Unknown number, Mr. Russo? This is Dr. Amin from Genotech Labs. A pause. I have your results. The dishwasher could wait. I drove to the lab like a man possessed, running 2 yellows. Sarah's car was already in the lot. Of course it was. Dr. Amin's office smelled like coffee and regret. He was younger than I expected, with kind eyes that made everything worse. "I'll give you both a moment," he said, sliding the envelope across the desk. Sarah reached for it. I grabbed it first. The paper made a terrible sound when I tore it open. Probability of paternity, 99.99998%. The numbers blurred. My ears rang. Somewhere far away, Sarah was crying. Mia was mine, which meant Sarah had lied. Not just about leaving, about everything. The parking lot asphalt burned through the soles of my shoes as I stumbled away from the lab. The DNA results crumpled in my fist felt like they were searing my skin. 99.99998%. Statistical certainty, mathematical truth. Sarah chased after me, her sandals slapping against the pavement. "Mark, please!" I whirled on her so fast she nearly collided with me. "You knew." My voice came out strangled. "This whole fucking time you knew she was mine." Sarah's face contorted, tears streaking. Her makeup. "I was going to tell you." "When?" I barked out a laugh that hurt my chest. "When Mia graduated high school? When you needed money?" I thrust the papers at her face. "She's 4 years old, Sarah. 4 years you let me miss. First steps, first words. All of it. The weight of it hit me like a sledgehammer. My knees nearly buckled. I braced myself against a parked car, the metal scorching hot under my palms. Sarah wiped her nose with the back of her hand. "Jason threatened to leave if I told you. He didn't want—" "I don't give a damn what Jason wanted." My shout echoed across the empty lot. A woman loading groceries into her minivan froze, then hurried her kids inside. Sarah flinched, but stood her ground. "What do you want me to say, Mark? That I'm sorry? I am. That I regret it? Every single day." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "But she's here now. She's yours. And she needs her father." The words slithered under my skin. Because she was right, and that was the worst part. The house was too quiet when I got home. Emily was at soccer practice. Jake was God knows where, probably smoking weed behind the 7-Eleven with his dropout friends. The silence gave me too much space to think. I poured 3 fingers of bourbon but didn't drink it. Just stared at the amber liquid, watching the afternoon. Light fracture through the glass. Mia was mine, my blood, my DNA. And Sarah had kept her from me for 4 years. The front door creaked open. Emily's cleats clacked against the hardwood. "Dad?" I quickly shoved the DNA results under a magazine. "Hey, champ, how was practice?" She dumped her gear by the stairs, her ponytail damp with sweat. "Coach made us run suicides till puked." She eyed the untouched bourbon. "You okay?" "No, not even close." "Just tired," I lied. Emily hesitated. Then, like she could sense the tectonic shift in our lives, sat down across from me. "It's Mom, isn't it?" I exhaled through my nose. The truth sat like a grenade in my lap. One pull of the pin and everything would blow apart. But Emily deserved to know. I slid the papers across the table. Emily's reaction was worse than I feared. "She's my sister?" Her voice cracked. "All this time. And Mom just... what? Forgot to mention it." She launched up from the table, sending her water bottle crashing to the floor. How could she do that? How could she keep that from us? I caught her by the shoulders as she started to hyperventilate. "Breathe, Em. Just breathe." She shoved me away, tears streaking down her flushed cheeks. "Don't tell me to breathe. That's my sister out there. My actual sister." Her eyes widened with sudden horror. "Does Jake know?" "Not yet." Emily paced the kitchen like a caged animal. "We have to meet her, like now, today." "Whoa, slow down." I grabbed her wrist. This isn't some Disney movie where we all hug it out. There are legal things to figure out. Custody, visitation. Emily yanked her arm free. She's family, Dad. Your daughter, my sister. Her voice dropped to a whisper. Don't you want to meet her? The question gutted me, because the truth was, I was terrified. What if she hated me? What if Sarah had poisoned her? Against us? What if the doorbell rang? Emily froze. We both knew who it was before I even looked through the peephole. Sarah stood on the porch, shifting from foot to foot, and beside her, gripping Sarah's hand like a lifeline, was Mia. The next hour passed in a surreal haze. Mia sat cross-legged on our living room rug, carefully examining Emily's soccer trophies. She was tiny for 4, with knobby knees and a smattering of freckles across her nose. Her hair was lighter than Emily's, more honey than chestnut, but the way she tilted her head when curious, that was all me. Sarah perched on the edge of the couch, wringing her hands. She's shy around new people, but I'm not shy, Mia announced without looking up. I'm assessing. Emily barked out a laugh. Oh, she's definitely yours, Dad. My chest tightened. Mia finally glanced up at me with those big blue eyes, my mother's eyes. Are you really my daddy? The room went silent. Sarah stiffened. Emily held her breath. I knelt beside Mia, my knees popping in a way that made me feel ancient. Yeah, kiddo, I really am. Mia considered this, then held up a battered stuffed rabbit. Mr. Hopper says that's a big responsibility. I choked out a laugh. Mr. Hopper's right. Sarah sniffled. When I looked up, she was crying silently, mascara pooling under her eyes. And in that moment, I hated her more than ever. Not for leaving, not for cheating, but for making me miss this. For robbing me of first steps and first words and all the mundane miracles of fatherhood. For forcing me to meet my own daughter like some estranged uncle. Mia reached out and patted my cheek with her sticky hand. You're sad. I swallowed the lump in my throat. A little, yeah. She nodded sagely. Mommy cries about you too. At night when she thinks I'm asleep. Sarah made a strangled noise. Emily's eyes widened. Damn. And just like that, the fragile tension shattered. Mia went back to examining trophies, oblivious to the emotional landmine she'd detonated. Sarah stood, abruptly. We should go. This is a lot. Emily shot me a panicked look. But she just got here. Mia looked up, suddenly anxious. I don't want to go. I want to play with Emily. Sarah's resolve wavered. I made a decision. Let her stay for dinner. My voice was steadier than I felt. You can pick her up at 7. Sarah hesitated, then nodded. She knelt to kiss Mia's forehead. Be good, okay? Mia was already tugging Emily toward the backyard. Can we play on the swings? As the door closed behind Sarah, I was left standing, in the wreckage of my old life, watching my daughters, both of them, disappear into the sunlight. The bourbon still sat untouched on the counter. For the first time in years, I didn't need it. Dinner was a disaster. Mia refused to eat anything but buttered noodles. Emily kept interrogating her about preschool and favorite colors, and Jake came home reeking of weed just as Sarah returned to pick Mia up, his bloodshot eyes locked onto the little girl sitting at our table. Who the hell is that? Mia hid behind Emily. Sarah hovered in the doorway like a ghost no one wanted to acknowledge. I stood slowly, my chair scraping against the tile. Jake. Outside. Now. The porch light buzzed overhead as my son slumped against the railing. So that's Mom's secret kid, huh? He flicked his lighter open and closed. Figures she'd finally show up when she needs something. I grabbed the lighter from him. She's 4, Jake. She didn't ask for any of this. He smirked, all teenage defiance and misplaced anger. And? You just gonna play happy family now? After everything Mom did? The screen door squeaked open. Emily stepped out, arms crossed. She's our sister, Jake, whether you like it or not. Jake laughed bitterly. Yeah, well, family's overrated. He shoved past Emily, the front door slamming behind him. Sarah cleared her throat from the doorway, Mia clutching her leg. We should go. Mia surprised everyone by darting over to hug my waist. Bye, Daddy. The word sent an electric shock through my system. Sarah's eyes welled up as she pried Mia away. The sight of them walking to the car, my ex-wife and the daughter I'd never known, left an ache in my chest that no amount of bourbon could fix. 3 days later, the custody papers arrived. My lawyer, a no-nonsense bulldog named Linda, spread them across my kitchen table. Sarah's fighting for joint custody, claims she's the primary caregiver. I nearly snapped my pen in half. She kept my child from me for 4 years. Linda adjusted her glasses. And the court will consider that, but they'll also consider that Sarah's been her sole provider since birth. Judges don't like to disrupt a child's routine. Emily slammed her textbook shut from where she'd been pretending to study at the counter. That's bullshit. Emily, I warned. No, Dad, it is. Mom doesn't get to lie for years then play the victim. She grabbed her phone. I'm testifying if it goes to court. Linda gave me a knowing look. A character witness could help, especially one who can speak to Sarah's inconsistent parenting. The thought of putting Emily through that made me sick, but the thought of letting Sarah walk away with my daughter again made me sicker. The supervised visitation center smelled like disinfectant and broken promises. Mia colored at a tiny table while Sarah and I sat on opposite sides of the room, a social worker monitoring every interaction. You look tired, Sarah said softly. I didn't respond. I'd been up all night reviewing custody strategies, replaying every mistake that led us here. Sarah twisted her wedding ring, the one I'd given her, the one she'd apparently kept all these years. Jason never wanted kids. When I got pregnant, he made me choose. I finally looked at her, and you chose wrong. Mia held up her drawing, a lopsided house with 4 stick figures. That's you, and Mommy, and Emily, and me. She frowned. Where's Jake? Sarah and I exchanged a glance. The first honest moment we'd shared in years. Jake's complicated, I said. Mia nodded sagely. Like fractions. The social worker hid a smile. That night, Jake came home with a black eye. He refused to say how he got it. But the rumors reached me anyway. A fight at the skate park, shouted accusations about deadbeat moms and replacement kids. I found him icing his face in the bathroom. You want to talk about it? He glared at me through the mirror. Why start now? The gash above his eyebrow needed stitches. As I cleaned it, he finally muttered, Is she really my sister? The alcohol swab hovered over his wound. Yeah, Jake, she really is. He winced as I pressed the bandage on. Does she know about me? The question cracked something open in my chest. She will. Jake studied his bruised knuckles. Maybe I could meet her. Not at some stupid visitation center, like for ice cream or something. It was the closest he'd come to admitting he cared in years. The ice cream parlor was Mia's choice. She sat between Emily and Jake, swinging her legs, utterly unaware of the tectonic shift she'd caused in our family. Jake's your brother, Emily explained between licks of mint chocolate chip. That means he has to protect you from bullies. Jake rolled his eyes but didn't correct her. Mia studied him with open curiosity. Do you have a sword? Jake snorted. What? For fighting bullies, Mia said matter-of-factly. Emily burst out laughing. Jake's lips twitched. The closest thing to a smile I'd seen from him in months. Sarah watched from across the table, her eyes shining. When Mia scrambled into her lap, she pressed a kiss to her hair and mouthed, "Thank you," to me. I didn't acknowledge it, because this wasn't for her. It was for Mia. And maybe, just maybe, for the broken pieces of us that were starting to fit back together in ways I never expected. The courtroom smelled like lemon polish and stale coffee. I adjusted my tie for the 5th time, watching Sarah whisper with her attorney at the opposite table. She wore a demure navy dress, the kind she used to wear to parent-teacher conferences, and kept glancing at the door where a social worker was keeping Mia occupied in the hallway. Our lawyer, Linda, nudged me. Stop staring. You look like you want to murder her. I flexed my hands against my thighs. I just want my daughter. The judge entered, and we all rose. Judge Wilkins was a no-nonsense woman in her 60s with a reputation for cutting through bullshit. She skimmed our file with a frown that made my stomach drop. Mr. Russo, she began. You're petitioning for primary custody of a child you've known about for... She checked the paperwork. 3 weeks? Sarah's attorney, a slick guy, in an expensive suit, smirked. Linda stood smoothly. Your Honor, my client was deliberately kept from his daughter for 4 years by the mother. The paternity test confirms... Yes, I've seen the test, Judge Wilkins interrupted. Ms. Russo, care to explain why you withheld the child? Sarah's hands trembled as she stood. I was... afraid. Jason, my ex-partner. He didn't want children. When I found out I was pregnant, he gave me an ultimatum. The judge's pen tapped against the desk. So you chose him over your child's right to know. Her father? Sarah's face crumpled. I thought I was protecting her. Emily made a disgusted noise beside me. The judge shot her a warning look. The next hour passed in a blur of legal arguments. Sarah's team painted me as a workaholic who'd emotionally neglected our marriage. Linda countered with school records showing I'd attended every parent-teacher conference, every soccer game, while Sarah had been absent for years. Then the judge dropped the bomb. I'd like to speak with the child. Mia sat in the judge's chambers, swinging her legs in a chair too big for her. She clutched Mr. Hopper, eyeing Judge Wilkins with cautious curiosity. Do you know why you're here today, Mia? The judge asked. Gently, Mia nodded. Mommy and Daddy are fighting over me. The bluntness of it hit me like a punch. Sarah stifled a sob. Judge Wilkins leaned forward. Who do you want to live with? Mia's lower lip wobbled. Why can't I live with both? The question hung in the air, heavy and unanswerable. The judge adjourned for lunch. We ate at a diner across the street. Me, Emily, Jake, and Linda. Sarah had taken Mia to the courthouse cafeteria. Jake stabbed at his pancakes. This is fucked up. Linda didn't even chide him for swearing. Family court usually is. Emily pushed her fries around. What happens if we lose? I had no answer. The thought of Mia disappearing again, of Sarah taking her to God knows where, made the coffee in my stomach turn to acid. Linda's phone buzzed. She read the message, then looked up sharply. We need to get back. Now. Sarah was hysterical when we returned. She's gone. Mia's gone. My blood ran cold. The social worker was pale, speaking rapidly into her phone. Judge Wilkins stormed into the hallway. What in God's name happened? The social worker trembled. I stepped away to take a call. She was right here. Sarah clutched my arm, nails digging in. He took her. I know he did. Who? I demanded. Sarah's face was sheer terror. Jason. The next 2 hours were the longest of my life. Police swarmed the courthouse. Security footage showed a man in a baseball cap leading Mia out by the hand. She went willingly. Jason must have told her some story. Sarah collapsed into a chair, gasping between sobs. He called last week. Said if I didn't drop the custody case, he didn't finish the sentence. I wanted to shake her. I wanted to scream. Instead, I called every contact I had. Cops, private investigators, even an old army buddy who worked security at the airport. Emily sat frozen beside Jake, tears streaming silently down her face. Then my phone rang. The park was deserted except for a lone figure on the swings. Jason sat with Mia in his lap, pushing lazily back and forth. He looked up as we approached, Sarah and me, with 2 cops hanging back near the patrol cars. Mia waved. Daddy, Mommy, look how high Uncle Jason pushes me. Jason smiled, the same charming grin that had probably seduced Sarah years ago. Hey, guys, we were just having some fun, right, Mia? I took a step forward. My voice was deadly calm. Give me my daughter. Jason's grip tightened on Mia. Or what? You'll have me arrested? He laughed. For what? Taking my niece to the park? Sarah made a choked noise. Please, Jason, just let her go. Mia looked between us, confusion dawning. Why is everyone mad? Jason stood abruptly, lifting Mia with him. Because your daddy wants to take you away from your mommy, just like he took Jake and Emily. The lie was so blatant, so cruel, I saw red. Mia started crying. I don't want to go! I want to stay with Mommy! Jason smirked at me over her head. See? She doesn't want you. That's when Jake moved. He lunged forward, yanking Mia from Jason's arms so fast the man stumbled. Run to Emily! Jake hissed, shoving Mia toward his sister. Jason swung, The punch connected with Jake's jaw, sending him sprawling. Then chaos erupted. The cops tackled Jason. Sarah scooped up a screaming Mia, and I dropped to my knees beside my son. Blood trickled from Jake's mouth, but he was grinning. Told you I'd protect her. The police hauled Jason away in cuffs. Kidnapping charges, obstruction, assault. Mia clung to Sarah, trembling. Is Uncle Jason in trouble? I knelt beside them, ignoring the ache in my knees. He lied to you, kiddo. That's not okay. Mia sniffled. But he said you were bad. Sarah kissed her forehead. Daddy's not bad. Mommy just made some mistakes. For the first time, I saw genuine remorse in Sarah's eyes. Not just fear, not just guilt. Real, crushing regret. Judge Wilkins arrived as the paramedics checked Jake. She took one look at the scene. Mia safe in Sarah's arms, Jake bleeding but defiant, Emily hovering protectively nearby, and made her decision. Primary custody to Mr. Russo. Supervised visitation for Ms. Russo until she completes parenting classes and therapy. Her gaze softened slightly. And family counseling for all of you. God knows you need it. Sarah didn't fight the ruling. She just held Mia tighter. As the ambulance took Jake to get stitches, Emily slipped her hand into mine. We did it, Dad. I looked at my daughters, both of them, and for the first time in years, felt something like hope. The road ahead would be messy. There would be more fights, more tears, more nights when the weight of it all felt unbearable. But Mia was mine, and no one was taking her away again. 1 year later, the house is louder. Mia's crayon drawings cover the fridge. Her tiny rain boots sit beside Emily's sneakers by the door. Jake's old treehouse now has pink plastic teacups scattered across its floorboards. Sarah comes every Sunday, for dinner. We don't talk about Jason, now serving 3 years in prison, or the years she stole. We just eat. Sometimes we even laugh. It's not forgiveness, not exactly, but it's something. Mia's first day of kindergarten nearly broke me. She marched into that classroom with her Dora the Explorer backpack and didn't even look back. Emily had to drag me away from the window. She's fine, Dad, Emily said, rolling her eyes. But she stayed with me at the coffee shop across the street until pickup time. When Mia burst out of school, she threw her arms around my legs. Daddy! I made 3 friends, and a ladybug landed on me at recess, and we had goldfish crackers, and the torrent of words washed over me like a balm. This was what I'd missed. Not just the milestones, but the ordinary magic of her everyday life. Jake got his GED. He announced it by slamming the certificate on the dinner table. Told you I wasn't a fuck-up, Mia gasped. Jake said the F word. Emily snorted milk out her nose. Sarah pretended not to hear. I just stared at that piece of paper like it held the secrets of the universe. Later, I found Jake teaching Mia how to skateboard in the driveway. He held her hands as she wobbled, his voice uncharacteristically patient. Lean forward, midget. No, not that much. The board shot out from under her. Jake caught her before she hit concrete. Mia giggled wildly. Again! Jake looked up and saw me watching. Instead of his usual scowl, he just shrugged. Someone's got to teach her to be cool. Emily graduates next month. She got into state with a partial soccer scholarship. Last week, I caught her showing Mia how to do homework at the kitchen table. Mia scribbling nonsense in a notebook while Emily pretended to grade it. A+, Emily announced solemnly. Best sister ever. Mia beamed like she'd won the Nobel Prize. Sarah's seeing someone. A quiet accountant named Greg who brings overly complicated board games to family game night. He treats Mia like a princess and ignores Jake's death glares with impressive calm. The first time Greg shook my hand, I wanted to hate him. But Mia adores him, and Sarah. Sarah seems lighter these days, less haunted. We'll never be what we were. Some fractures don't heal clean, but we're learning to parent around the cracks. Last night, Mia woke up screaming from a nightmare. I got to her room first. She was sitting up in bed, tears streaming down her face. I dreamed you went away like Mommy did. The raw terror in her voice undid me. I gathered her up, her tiny frame shaking against mine. I'm not going anywhere, kiddo, not ever. She sniffled. Promise? I kissed the top of her head. Cross my heart. Mia pulled back to study my face with those serious blue eyes. Then she nodded, satisfied, and curled against my chest. Okay. Just like that, she believed me. And for the first time in years, I believed in something too. To the audience, this is where our story ends. Not with a perfect, happy ending, but with a real one. Life after betrayal isn't about going back to how things were. It's about building something new from the pieces that remain. Was Mark right to let Sarah stay in Mia's life? Should he have fought harder for full custody? Could you ever forgive what Sarah did? Let me know in the comments. I read every single one. And if this story resonated with you, share it. Someone out there needs to know that broken families can still find their way. Thanks for watching until the end. If you want more raw, real stories like this, check out my other videos. And don't forget to subscribe. Because the truth, it's never simple, but it's always worth telling.